Birthright Part 1. We finally start watching Deep Space Nine, so y'all can relax and stop asking.
The Enterprise has arrived at Deep Space Nine to help with repairs to the station.
Beverly is talking about relaxing, but Picard has to go through a bunch of political water crap.
Geordi and Worf go off to eat, and Geordi complains about the faulty replicators making the food taste bad, but of course, Worf really likes it.
Pretty sure we've already had that joke.
Yeah, but at least it wasn't as lame this time. It was just kind of there.
And as he's eating, Worf is spotted by an ominous figure off in the distance.
I called him a giant humanoid rat, but yeah.
Might have been a tie-in to Graveyard Shift.
On the Enterprise, Data investigates unauthorized activity in sickbay and finds Dr. Bashir from Deep Space Nine, who is excited to meet him.
And has hooked up some unknown piece of equipment to the Enterprise to figure out what it does. So in other words, he fits right in with the rest of the crew. And I guess it was easy for him to bypass whatever password or security measures they have in place and just start using all of their stuff.
Back on Deep Space Nine, the humanoid rat approaches Worf and asks about his Klingon heritage. He identifies himself as Shrek,
But it was clear it was James Cromwell.
and not Mike Myers. And he says he has information about Worf's father, Moog, who he claims is still alive in a Romulan prison camp.
So it's going to be a Worf episode and focus on his past, so I had some pretty high hopes for this one. Interesting we get James Cromwell again, because we just saw him in The Hunted.
Yeah, and I actually didn't know it was him until I looked him up.
As soon as he started talking, I knew it was James Cromwell.
Shrek wants payment for the information, but Worf says a Klingon would rather die than be taken prisoner, and says he should kill him for spreading lies about his father, and he storms off.
Back on the Enterprise, he starts lashing out at people before returning to his room to practice his Klingon Tai Chi very aggressively.
He ends up breaking a table, which is made of glass, and it's still stupid that they have those on the ship.
Troy comes in, and Worf spills the beans, and Troy tells him he can't deny the possibility that his father's alive just because he doesn't want it to be true.
Worf doesn't respond, so she just leaves. She just found out about this, but apparently doesn't think it's worth more of an in-depth discussion.
What a great counselor. I'm off duty.
Down in engineering, Data and Geordi examine the device with Dr. Bashir, who asks Data if his hair grows. And Data reveals that he has the ability to control the rate of his follicle replenishment, which could mean any number of things, none of which make any sense.
You're going to have to explain that.
I think that's fine. It doesn't make any sense.
How does it not make any sense?
I mean, his body is not real. He's not alive. Is his scalp creating new hair follicles?
I looked at it as he can control the length of it.
Well, that's not what he said. And that would mean either way, his body would have to be creating the hair out of something. What is it using to do that? I had some questions, basically. And he says he's never had a reason to alter the length of his hair, but I would think if he wanted to be more human, he would allow it to grow and be cut.
Bashir is also fascinated to find out that Data has a pulse and appears to breathe, but Data explains those actually serve an additional function for him.
Which was nice, because they actually explained it, unlike the hair follicles. And he says that people usually ask about his more extraordinary abilities.
They hook up the piece of mystery equipment, and Data, like an idiot, stands right in front of the damn thing as they turn it on.
And receives a plasma shock. He ends up having a weird vision where everything is seen through a fisheye lens.
He encounters a blacksmith, who we see turns out to be Brent Spiner, before Data wakes up.
Geordi tells him his positronic net was overloaded, but Data says that isn't possible because he still has memories for that time.
And reveals that the blacksmith was Dr. Soong.
Geordi examines him, and they spout out some technobabble that doesn't make much sense.
And after the investigation, Geordi finally decides to disconnect the mystery equipment that just shot out a bunch of plasma beams at people. Way to prioritize.
Dr. Bashir suggests it was a dream or a hallucination, but Data says that isn't possible. But Bashir points out that Data is a unique machine.
And should approach the experience from a more human perspective. Data goes to talk to Worf in 10 Forward about his past experience of having a vision when he was a child, and fills him in on what happened in engineering.
Worf tells him he must discover the vision's true meaning and how it relates to his father, Dr. Soong. And in the process, Worf very blatantly comes to a conclusion about his own father, and the camera gets right up in his face in case you don't get it from the obvious dialogue.
Oh, is that what was happening? Worf returns to the station to find Cromwell and tells him to take him to the Romulan prison camp. And this whole scene, I was thinking how it must be so difficult for this dude to operate with no thumbs.
Worf tells him he'll pay him afterward or kill him if he's lying. And he does all this right out in front of everyone and then just leaves Shrek there.
Worf could have threatened to break his thumbs, but he doesn't have any. I noticed some people down below seemed to react, but the majority of them just kept going. So I was wondering what the hell goes on the station that people are like, that seems pretty normal. On Shrek's ship, they reach the planet, and I noticed that Shrek's speech patterns improved dramatically, so I wondered if his weird speech before was just an act, but I don't understand the purpose of what that would have been.
Or if James Cromwell was like, wow, this dialogue is dumb, I'm just going to say it however I want. And Shrek warns Worf about predators, which I was hoping we'd get to see, but we don't. Thought maybe we'd get a cool Star Trek versus Predator crossover.
They probably did that in a comic book, right?
I hope so.
Terminator versus Predator versus Worf.
He'd probably end up teaming up with the Predators because they got kind of the same mindset, just going off with them.
Can't you see Worf and the Predator both doing their crazy laughs at the same time?
Yes, and that would be awesome.
Back on the Enterprise, Picard is thinking of switching sci-fi shows and hopping over to Stargate when Data comes in to discuss his vision.
Picard asks why he's comparing visions from other cultures instead of asking what the vision may have meant to himself. He displays his typical self-centeredness by saying that when looking at pieces of art, people don't ask what it means to others, but only what it means to themselves, completely ignoring whatever the artist's actual intentions may have been.
You sound like an artist. I'm a huge fan of Mondrian.
Oh, shut the hell up.
My interpretation of those squares is they're squares. So Data, feeling inspiration, goes to do some speed painting.
In the usual goofy-looking fashion. Down on the Romulan planet, Shrek guides Worf and gives him a homing beacon before leaving, saying that when he returns, it will not be in the same place. And I thought that seemed like a bad idea, because the Romulans would easily be able to find him later if they capture Worf and get the homing device.
What else is he going to do?
That's a good question, but they could settle on a different place to meet.
But Worf doesn't know the planet.
He doesn't need to. Look at the freaking stars. Just tell him to go in a certain direction for, 20 kilometers or whatever.
Worf is moving towards the camp when he sees a woman bathing in a pond, and she spots him, and he tells her to lead him to the camp so he can take her and the other Klingons home.
She's confused at his confusion about her being outside the camp, and she says she is home. He tells her not to tell anyone about him, and hides when someone else approaches who turns out to be a Romulan.
Back on the Enterprise, Geordi goes to find out why Data is late to his engineering duties and finds him doing a bunch of paintings simultaneously because he's a super painting robot. He says he was eventually inspired to start painting birds, which was not part of his vision.
He gets Geordi to agree to recreate the circumstances of the first vision because he wants to know what he would have seen if he hadn't been reactivated so quickly.
So the trio sets everything up down in engineering again and zap Data.
He goes into the same vision, but this time he sees that Dr. Soong is hammering a wing, which he puts into a bucket, causing a cloud of steam. And when the cloud dissipates, Soong is replaced by a bird which flies away.
Data finds himself on the bridge, and Dr. Soong tells him that his vision will always be different, and he's showing promise.
He tells him he has transcended beyond his android beginnings.
And he's proud of him for crossing the threshold into being able to dream. It was very... what's the word I'm looking for? Esoteric?
No.
Ethereal?
Maybe.
It's got to start with an E. How about enthusiastic? Educational?
And he tells Data that he is the bird, and he finds himself flying through the corridors, then out into space.
When he wakes up, he discusses his experience with Bashir and says that while he was shut down, dormant circuits were activated from the plasma shock.
He says they were not supposed to activate until he reached a certain level of development, whatever that means.
Yeah, what does that mean?
But the shock activated them early. and he plans on shutting down his cognitive functions for a short time daily to try to generate new visions.
Giving Bashir the perfect opportunity to take advantage of Data at the same time every night. Way to just throw your weakness out there, Data.
Bashir says he'll write a paper about it, which means they'll probably never talk about it again.
Meanwhile, Worf has reached the prison camp and manages to solid snake his way in.
He finds a group of Klingons seated around a fire singing Klingon Kumbaya.
When the head guy leaves, Worf follows him and tells him who he is,
and asks if his father is alive. The Klingon, Lakor, says his father died at Khitomer and that 73 Klingons are at the camp. Lakor is played by Richard Hurd, who I recognized from The Awesome V.
Is that the old one?
Yes, not the crappy one.
Haven't made it past S yet. That was a stupid joke, I'm sorry. He tells Worf he should not have come, and the other elders show up and hold him and tell him that none of them are leaving as Romulans enter with weapons. Birthright, Part 1, overall.
I'm going to say right up that I gave this one a C, but it was a hard one to grade because unlike a lot of the other two-parters, we don't have a lot of relevant information to really understand everything that's going on, and I feel like that could change it a lot in one direction or the other. The idea that Shrek is giving Worf information with nothing more than the expectation of getting paid would be kind of dumb if it doesn't turn out that he has ulterior motives. But whether he has ulterior motives or not, Worf just taking him at his word and trusting him to come back for him, instead of doing some kind of background research on either him or the planet first, or at least telling someone else what he's doing, was pretty stupid. I know he's worried about his honor or whatever, but is no one going to ask where the head of security went? And the fact that other characters have been disappearing lately without anyone noticing doesn't excuse it. Other than that, there wasn't a whole lot to the Worf side of things here, so we'll have to see what happens with that. I thought James Cromwell was totally wasted playing a giant rat.
Well, he was kind of wasted in The Hunted, too.
Yeah, that's true. At first, I hated the direction they were going in with Data, and the way some of the other characters reacted to him supposedly having a vision I thought was pretty stupid. He's a robot, but they seem to forget about that. However, I was pleasantly surprised that the explanation for his visions made some kind of sense, although I hope they do go more into Dr. Soong's intentions with that, and what Data ends up getting out of his visions. And I thought they could have done a lot more with Data's first vision to make it more interesting and intriguing, instead of just going with kind of generic boring stuff. Dr. Bashir was just kind of there, he didn't really do anything. The Deep Space Nine crossover aspect seems pretty pointless so far. I didn't think it was a bad episode, but I didn't think it was anything special on its own. So we'll see how the second half goes.
I gave this one a C+. So because Dr. Soong programmed Data to dream, did he really dream at all? Or is that just another subroutine? And if Dr. Soong was able to hide this programming, what other shit is in there? What else can Data do? And is all his dreaming stuff done? It seems like they wrapped it up by the end of this part, so I'm gonna guess it's not really gonna come up again. And it seems like a big deal for him. So putting the whole Worf big deal thing in this episode 2 felt like a lot. I assume the second part is just going to be about Worf, but I am interested to see where that goes. I thought the Deep Space Nine crossover was interesting, but really served more as a commercial to get people to watch that show too. And we got almost nothing with Picard, other than the opening and that one tiny scene where he was thinking about going to Stargate.
I thought the scene with him and Beverly at the beginning was pointless because I thought that was going to be what the episode was going to be. That's what you start the episode with, and then it doesn't go anywhere. That was a bad choice, I thought.
I think it would have been better if they had expanded on Picard's experiences and had more tiny scenes where he's continually stressed out by stupid shit.
Yeah, and where was everybody else from Deep Space Nine? Why did we not get any interactions there? I mean, I know in real life it's because they couldn't get all the actors there or whatever, but in the episode it's kind of weird.
Yeah. So we've watched all of Deep Space Nine. It was okay.